So if you thought that episode 3 of season 8 of Game of Thrones was all wrong and you were disappointed with it, keep on watching because I'm going to prove to you why you're actually wrong. Yeah. You're wrong. Sorry to break it to you. But if you haven't seen the episode, you don't know what's going on, you don't know what I'm talking about, you missed the big moment, stop watching now. There's going to be spoilers, even though I feel like, we usually kind of keep the spoilers to ourselves and we try to let people watch the show. But the moment this moment happened, everybody was on Twitter, everybody was on Facebook, Instagram, the videos were everywhere. So if you happen to miss it and you're one of the lucky few that missed the spoilers, stop watching now. If you don't care, if you already know what happens, or if you watch the episode, keep on watching because I'm going to explain to you why everything has been fulfilled in this episode. Well, almost everything. Hit subscribe. Also, comment below your thoughts on the episode and then wait to the end and maybe you'll disagree. Maybe you'll agree with me. I don't know. We'll find out. Hit the like button and the notification bell and let's get talking about Game of Thrones episode 3, season 8, The Long Night. Sorry, the lighting is all weird. Like I'm looking here and it's like my cheekbone looks like cut because of the darkness here, but at least the whole screen isn't dark like last episode of Game of Thrones. People complaining they couldn't see it. I actually didn't mind that, and this video has nothing to do with that whatsoever. I didn't mind the darkness. I felt like that made you feel like you were in the midst of all the chaos, and you had that feeling of like, oh my god, what's going on right now? And I get it. It was a choice, a stylistic choice, which I actually agree with, but that has nothing to do with this video. This has to do with the people that are saying that the final scene of Arya going like, jumping out of nowhere, dagger in hand, choking, grabbing, shanking, was fan service, which it might have been, but they've been leading up to this moment since episode 1, season 1. Yeah. Actually, I will even say this, they have been pointing to this moment even before the show started. A lot of people complaining after last week's episode that they felt like the prophecies had been unfulfilled for Game of Thrones. That the Azor Ahai, the Long Night, the White Walkers, the Night King, the Long Winter, winter is coming, has all led to nothing, to one moment. And I disagree. Actually, I completely disagree. I had a Jimmy Neutron like brain blast moment a little while ago. So Game of Thrones, which is the point of this video, Game of Thrones. The writers of Game of Thrones and the producers and the directors were very, very particular in which book of the series Song of Ice and Fire that they chose. They didn't choose to call it the Song of Ice and Fire like the book series. They didn't decide to call it Clash of Kings. No, they chose the first book, which is called Game of Thrones, for a very, very particular reason. Because that's what they were going to be focusing on in this show. They weren't going to be focusing so much on the White Walkers, on the battle of, Ice and Fire between the White Walkers and the dragons. Yes, they're there. They were in the show and they were a really cool moment. And of course, the dragons are cool as hell and the White Walkers were cool as hell. But that isn't the point of the show. The show was particularly chosen to be Game of Thrones because it follows the politics, the backstabbing, the fighting, the killing, all for the Iron Throne. And if you missed that point, I don't know what show you're watching, because this has been kind of the forefront of the entire series from day one. Before day one, again, they chose the title Game of Thrones for a very particular reason, because that was the focus of the show. There's so many storylines that are followed in the book series, The Song of Ice and Fire, that it's being able to pin down kind of one main theme was what they really chose to do, which is, again, the Game of Thrones. That's what we've been waiting for this entire series, is who's going to end up sitting on the Iron Throne. The White Walkers, honestly, they were never going to sit on the Iron Throne. It's never going to happen. So why do we care that they end up just going down like, shank? I don't know how that's going to be my motion for it. Like, choke, shank. That's what I'm going to call that moment with Arya Stark. Also, people really complained a lot about, Arya Stark, that was just fan service. Okay, so maybe it was a little bit of fan service. However, they have been pointing to the importance of Arya and the badassery? That's not a word, but of Arya Stark since day one. The first moment we see Arya Stark, she's watching, of course, Bran and Robb Stark and her cousin, Aegon Targaryen, I'm gonna call him that, Jon Snow, practicing some archery. Bran isn't good at it. Like, he's just not good. And, Ned says, hey, you weren't good the first time you tried it. And then Arya Stark proves him all wrong by, like, pulling back the bow and getting a bullseye in that first moment. That was setting up how this character was going to form. The entire time, she wants a sword. She wants a bow and arrow. She wants to be part of the fighting. She doesn't want to be a little princess girl with the dresses. She doesn't want to be Sansa. She wants to be the hero, and she wants to, like, take down all the bad guys. She wants to be in the middle of the fight, and this episode was finally her ultimate victory. I mean, it wasn't one of the main names on her list, but at least she killed, like, the Night King. I mean, come on. That is like the ultimate of ultimates on any list. Even if it wasn't on her list, she got that moment. And I feel like that was a really good nod to her character and everything she wanted to do in the show. Saying that it was fan service takes away from her character and what her character has been building to. She had her moments with Syrio Forel as a water dancer. While she was in King's Landing, you had, you know, her moment. They kind of nodded to every moment. With the being a water dancer, they showed her in the library, that crazy scene in the library with all the army of the dead were like sneaking around and like, oh my God, like what's gonna happen? And she's sneaking around undetected. That's what she was trained to do. Syrio Forel trained her to do that from like day one of her training, is to be quiet and quick and not let your enemies find you and be able to get you. You have to be fast. And that's, you know, they even pointed out when she gets Needle. Episode 1, she gets Needle and he said, you know, you stab him with the pointy end. If you're quick enough, you can put holes in a man. That's what she did. She was quick enough to stab and put a hole in the Night King. Come on. This was already set up since day one. And they show her with her, like, thing that she got from Gendry, this, like, really cool, like, I don't even know what to call it, weapon, which is what she's learned how to train to do with the Faceless Men and with Jake and Hagar. Everything about her character has pointed to this moment. To say that, oh, they just took the cheap way out is a cheap way out for her, like, a cheap way to point out her character, because this is everything her character has been since the moment we met Arya. This is what her life has led up to. And then to use the dagger in like poetic justice, that was the one that tried to kill Bran, that Bran gave her at the weirwood tree just before, you know, he's like, hey, I'm never going to be able to use this. Maybe you can make use of this. Like, they were pointing to this moment. This wasn't a random act of like, all right, well, we'll just have Arya kill him because everybody likes Arya. They've been pointing to this since day one, whether they already kind of weren't thinking of that all the way back then, but you know, hey, the story, it's not like it took like a left turn. It's not like Sansa killed. If Sansa killed the Night King, I'd have a problem. But it was Arya, so it was very, very different. People are getting mad. Well, what about Azor Ahai? What about the prince who was promised? What about Lightbringer? Again, the show wasn't supposed to be surrounded by that. Melisandre's been wrong before. I mean, she did burn Shireen for pretty much no reason. She did back Stannis Baratheon for pretty much no reason. So she has been wrong before. However, to say that those prophecies haven't been actually like come to fruition is also wrong. We got the Long Night. This episode was specifically called the Long Night for a reason. Now, everybody watching it was kind of thinking like of an Alaska moment where they have, you know, darkness for months and months and months, 24 hour, whatever hours of darkness. We were expecting that. We were expecting a very harsh winter. We were expecting the Night King to create darkness over the world. But what if it was actually quite literal, in the literal sense of, hey, it probably felt like that night for those characters felt like an eternity. Could you imagine being in those crypts? That night felt probably like weeks long for them in those crypts, or anybody in that battle. You just have these like zombie people, the army of the dead crawling all over you and attacking you. That probably felt like it lasted forever. It was a long night. In the literal sense of it felt like a long night to them. Not that it was going to last weeks and months and years and whatever for eternity, that they were going to snuff the light out of the world. Maybe it literally was just a long night. Like, that was a rough night. Like, you know, if you get drunk with your buddies and then, oh man, that was a long night. Kind of the same kind of, you know, connotation to it. Now, going with Azor Ahai, honestly, I always forget about that part. It, to me, doesn't matter. And because they've never really focused on that, they've been kind of side points to the show. Again, because it is the Game of Thrones, not the game of Azor Ahai and Lightbringer. However, Beric Dondarrion has been a very important character that has been kind of pushed to the background, but he's been brought back by the Lord of Light many of times. And Melisandre's like, hey, why would that happen? Why are you so important? That doesn't make sense to me. That you gotta be somebody special. And he was. He was the one who was able to protect Arya from the army of the dead for her to kill the Night King. He has a light, like a sword that's on fire. Isn't that Lightbringer? Now, I'm not saying that that's Lightbringer and oh, that's it, but we've had it. You have it there. They might not be like this big aha huge moments, but they've been there. She is, hey, who knows? Maybe Arya is the prince that was promised. We don't know that. They haven't discussed it yet. I also think people don't have faith in the writers of the show, that they're going to say, oh, he's dead. That's it. No more. We're not going to talk about it ever again. I think there's going to be a wrap-up. I think next episode is the wrap-up to the Long Night and the getting ready for the big battle that will, of course, occur with Cersei, because they got to fight Cersei now. And then episode 6 will be the wrap-up. Actually, Emilia Clarke said, oh my God, episode 5 is like mind-blowing, which might be the episode where we actually lose a lot of main characters, because I was disappointed that more main characters didn't die this past episode, but I think a lot of people are going to die episode 5, and then episode 6 is the wrap-up, because we only have 3 left. That makes sense to me. They're not going to just be like, oh yeah, no, that was it, and never talk about it again. Like, you know, after you get drunk with your buddies, I don't know why I keep using that as my reference, like, you know, you're like, oh man, last night, that was crazy. Yeah, they're gonna do the same thing. They're gonna be like, oh my god, last night was crazy. Let's talk about it. What just happened? And Bran is gonna, like, you know, sit there, staring off into the distance, and explain what happened. I think that's what's gonna happen, and then I'm gonna be content with it. Because the whole show for me, while the dragons and all that stuff is cool, I just want to know who's going to end up on the throne. That's all I care about. I really couldn't care less what happened to the White Walkers, because I knew at the end of it they couldn't win, and they weren't going to sit on the throne, so okay, we had our thing. Arya became the hero of the moment. She got to kill the Night King, which was an epic moment. Oh god, it was so epic. And now we can move on and actually get to the point of the show, which is the Game of Thrones. Not the game of defeating the White Walkers, or the game of playing keep away with Bran. Like, that's fine. I'm okay with it. What do you think? Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm completely wrong. Do you think that it's going to be very different in the book, though? Do you think George R.R. Martin is going to focus on the White Walkers a little bit more than the show has, because his series is called The Song of Ice and Fire rather than The Game of Thrones? What do you think? Comment it down below. Also, hit subscribe, hit the notification bell, and let's get ready for episode 4 of, God, I can't believe it's the last season of Game of Thrones. And if anything crazy happens, I'll see you back here again, and I'll do another rant video. Because I like doing rant videos.